Did you know the messenger of God, the Prophet Muhammad, married a 6-year-old, and they consummated when she was 9. Now that I have your attention, I'm Nappy Napkin, and you're watching something, alright? I have trouble clarifying what this video is meant to be about. I will attempt, in the least, to dive into and inform you properly of the relationship between the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, and his child bride, Aisha. Now, I want to bring this up as quickly as possible so that you know I researched this properly. I bought and read this 400-page novel depicting the life of Aisha bin Abi Bakr with my own money as well, like it was 200,000 rupiah or so. So this video will most likely be the most I was willing to research from all of my videos before and every video after. That should give you a good idea of how much respect I have for her and of this subject matter in general. Before I get into this, I think I need to explain myself, or why I even chose to talk about this in the first place. It started 2 or so years ago when I made the Sukarno, the first Indonesian president and national hero. He was a total playboy, who after an attempt of blackmail against him by filming him surrounded by women, practically recording a sex tape, he openly confessed that he wished copies of it back home for his country to see. My man! This motivated me to make a series called AAIG, then that stands for As Anime As It Gets, but this video is most likely the last installment of it, so why bother? I mean, I basically covered the essentials of, or like the message that I was trying to say, being my country and my religion, both aspects of my life that not necessarily were of my own choice, but I was forced to respect. Then I gained a respect for it later in life, researching on it and fitting it into my personal space of interest, being anime. Yeah, you get it. Speaking of which, this video and the way I act will still try to be more respectful of the topic, hopefully. So less funny haha, more serious encyclopedia facts, you know. Sure, Sukarno was a big political figure who fought for our country, but I could still joke around with him, you know. If I say anything about our Prophet Muhammad, it will be labeled as sacrilege, so if I don't make a video in the next few months, that means I'm probably stoned to death. Or busy with college and way to depressed and lazy, as I usually am. Speaking of controversial, the fact that our holy prophet married an underage child could be seen as controversial to some. Some could even say that this act of marrying the youth is worse than being homosexual, and being homosexual is forbidden in Islam. I somehow wrote this entire script without thinking about this because my own perspective on sexual orientation is so elusive. I didn't think it was important to clarify. Even though I know that our prophet marrying a 6-year-old is why you're watching this, I should probably write a passage to calm the flames a bit. So here it is. I suggest you be more open-minded and empathetic. Let go of the fact that this is the 21st century and picture yourself in the Middle East around those times. First of all, the age of majority was 9, so it was legal, for one. Second, the consensus around women was severely twisted from what it is now. Women, as much as I hate to say it, were treated more of like an object by men more than individuals. Their only purpose was to be childbearers and care for men, while the men were the thinkers and revolutionaries. They fought in wars filled with glory, and no one had any expectations for women. Basically, if you're born as a woman, you're more likely to be a slave for men. If you're born as a woman, your main problem in life was being a woman. Here's a great passage in the book that explains this perfectly. You cannot save anyone. That is the task of men. In my mother's world, being female meant being helpless, powerless, because what else was a sword but power? In her world, women weren't supposed to fight, only to submit. They weren't supposed to plan, but to let others plan for them. They weren't supposed to live, only to serve. How delightful! Now you might be thinking, well, those norms are at fault, and you're right, which is why we've changed, so now let's move on. Actually, one more thing. If you thought our prophet has some perverse, lecherous aura now that you know he married the underage, the next section of this video will portray their relationship was nothing but wholesome and genuinely heartwarming. Okay, so I was reminded of Muhammad's child bride just because maybe I rechecked my channel and saw the Sukarno video and thought of this, I'm not sure, whatever the reason, I was so invested into it, I immediately began researching. I found a Wikipedia article, and after reading it, it practically convinced me that buying and reading this book was worth it. It just seemed like they had a very wholesome relationship. To prove this, I'm going to read some passages verbatim. I'm reading the wiki article instead of the book because the wiki article got me to read the book in the first place. And the book, while it had fun moments, surprisingly didn't have many humanizing interactions between Muhammad and Aisha. It was mostly them arguing, in fact. I'll get into it later on. Also, yeah, the next section is literally just me reading a Wikipedia article with some quick remark afterwards. In most Muslim traditions, Khadija bint Khuwaylid is described as Muhammad's most beloved and favored wife. However, Sunni traditions places Aisha as second to Khadija. There are several hadiths or stories or sayings of Muhammad that support this belief. One relates that when a companion asked him, "Who is the person you love most in the world?" he simply responded, "Aisha." I mean, that's just adorable. Others relate that Muhammad built Aisha's apartment so that her door opened directly into the mosque, and that she was the only woman with whom Muhammad received revelations. They bathed in the same water, and he prayed while she lay stretched out in front of him. I don't know what lay stretched out in front of him means, but since he was praying, I didn't think it was malicious. Various traditions revealed a mutual affection between Muhammad and Aisha. He would often just sit and watch her with her friends play with dolls, and on occasion he would even join them. I can't help it. Rumors that Aisha and Safwan had committed adultery were spread. Some defended Aisha's reputation, while Ali bin Abi Talib advised, "Women are plentiful, and you can easily change one for another." Ooh, damn, what a Chad. Imagine if a strong political advisor said that today. Aisha and Muhammad would often have races with each other. "I had a race with him, the Prophet, and I outstripped him on my feet. When I became fleshy again, I raced with him, the Prophet, and he outstripped me." He said, "This is for that outstripping." I don't know what fleshy or outstripping means. However, if it means overtaking, then this is just a cute humanizing interaction between daughter and father. And from that book, Muhammad sort of saw Aisha that way. And that humanization is the main reason I made this series. Sukarno and this video. Anyways, the last excerpt I'll read from the article is also my favorite, which is the story of honey. After the daily Asr prayer, Muhammad would visit each of his wives' apartment to inquire about their well-being. Muhammad was just in the amount of time he spent with them and attention he gave to them. Once, Muhammad's fifth wife, Zainab bint Jahsh, received some honey from a relative, which Muhammad took a particular liking to. As a result, every time Zainab offered some of this honey to him, he would spend a long time in her apartment. This did not sit well with Aisha or Hafsa bin Umar. According to an account, Hafsa and I decided that when the Prophet entered upon either of us, she would say, "I smell in you the bad smell of magafir," or a bad-smelling raisin. "Have you eaten magafir?" When he entered upon one of us, she said that to him. He replied to her, "No, but I have drunk honey in the house of Zainab bin Jahsh, and I will never drink it again. But I have drunk honey." Soon after this event, Muhammad reported that he had a revelation in which he was told he could eat anything permitted by God. Classic harem jealousy. I just thought this was amusing. The most heartwarming out of all these stories would be when I learned that when Muhammad died, it was when he was resting on Aisha's lap. Aisha remained Muhammad's favorite wife throughout his life. When he became ill and suspected that he was probably going to die, he began to ask his wives whose apartment he was to stay in next. They eventually figured out that he was trying to determine when he was due with Aisha, and then they allowed him to retire there. He remained in Aisha's apartment until his death. and his last breath was taken as he lay in the arms of Aisha, his most beloved wife. That's so romantic and lovely that I just had to find out more. I read to the bottom of that Wikipedia page and saw that there was a book loosely based on her life and relationship with the Prophet. Although after searching for it, I almost immediately saw that it was quite controversial, not only for its censorship, but also its dubious contents. Now, the whole censorship drama was basically this college professor who specialized in Middle Eastern history read the book and said about it, I quote, incredibly offensive and a very ugly, stupid piece of work, suggesting that its explosive contents could inspire violence among radical Islamic groups and thereby represent a threat to national security. It was then cancelled from publication run and even completely taken off store shelves, at least in Serbia, to censor it further. That's not all though. I searched up critical reviews from Goodread and Amazon and it doesn't look too good either. Quite a few of these reviews were scathingly negative, with a lot saying it was basically softcore pornography, or in the least, a disgrace to the reality that actually happened, depicting Aisha as a spoiled brat and Muhammad a perverse old man. After reading these reviews, I became hesitant, naturally, as much as I wanted to know more of their relationship. I did not want a picture-perfect fluff fan fiction of these characters. I wanted a factual, objective perspective on this, or at least as best as possible. However, I don't think there is any one perfect source for this, as even scholars argue on the details of the history of Islam, so I figured I just want to experience it any way I can. And a lengthy novel served as a good one, like a one-and-all source for everything. I became as hesitant as I became morbidly curious and skeptical, and I found a copy on Wikipedia and bought it immediately. And here I am, standing in front of a camera after having read it. Was it a waste of time and money? The answer to that question is in another video. I'm real sorry, I just figured no one would watch a video over 15 minutes, and this entire script might be pushing 30 minutes or so. So I'm just gonna split it into 2 or 3 or however much. But I also know a video being called Part 2 might receive less views, but now that you decide to watch it or not, since it's less based on purely Aisha and her relationship with the Prophet being a child bride, and more of a book review of the Jewel of Medina, which I don't believe is a 100% faithful recreation of real events. This video practically reaches the essence of the matter. They had a heartwarming relationship, and they truly loved each other, with Aisha being Muhammad's favorite wife. Age really is a number. And with that, see you in part 2. Also, when I first read the wiki articles, my mind instantly thought of Aisha looking like Scold from Oh My Goddess. I put this at the end because I need to let this cursed part of me out to confess my sins and to not skew your perspective of her unlike me. Okay, see you in part 2.